Tonight, Senator Lydia Thorpe backtracks on her comments about her swearing-in affirmation. Hello, I'm Pamela Medlen. This is ABC News. Terrorists attack a defence company in Turkey's capital, killing 5 people and injuring several others. Calls for changes to Australia's citizenship test after a Thai migrant fails 5 times. And a WA farmer goes above and beyond to propose to his fiancée. Renegade Senator Lydia Thorpe has walked back her account of her parliamentary swearing-in day, saying her mispronunciation of the oath of allegiance was in fact a mistake. She told the ABC yesterday she swore allegiance to the Queen's heirs, not her heirs, sparking calls from the coalition to have her suspended. But Senator Thorpe says she's not going anywhere. Political reporter Isabel Rowe has more.
3 days on from this outburst before the King, Lydia Thorpe remains in the spotlight.
The whole world is talking about it and my people are happy.
Critics say Monday's protest broke her oath of allegiance to the monarch, an oath the Victorian Independent pointed out yesterday she actually fudged.
Her heirs and successors according to law. It wasn't her heirs, it was her heirs that I was giving my allegiance to, and now that, they're no longer here, I don't know where that stands.
The opposition is seeking legal advice on whether that mispronunciation could be grounds for dismissal.
What we see now is a circumstance that creates a doubt over her eligibility and validity to have taken up her seat in the Senate.
By mid-morning, Senator Thorpe's explanation had changed.
My English grammar isn't as good as others, and I spoke what I read, so I misspoke. Well, it starts with a H, so...
Lydia Thorpe has found a smattering of support from the Senate.
It's her right as an Indigenous woman and as an Australian citizen and as a senator to raise these issues. I don't have a problem with it at all.
Okay.
In fact, I found her words deeply moving.
She says she's speaking for those outside the halls of power.
All Aboriginal people that I bumped into around the street have all pulled me up to say, "Oh, Michael, did you see that woman on their TV? She's standing up for us."
Constitutional experts believe because the senator signed the oath, she did swear in correctly. Still, the Senate could vote on a censure motion, a symbolic condemnation with no legal consequences.
And we'll work with people across the chamber about what the appropriate response is.
I'm an independent. No one can kick me out of there.
Defiance until the end. Isabel Rowe, ABC News, Canberra.
Pacific countries are ramping up pressure on Australia over climate change as Anthony Albanese lands in Samoa to join a large meeting of Commonwealth leaders. King Charles has also used his first day in the country to highlight the existential threat fossil fuels pose to the global community. Foreign Affairs reporter Stephen Jedgetts is in Samoa for the meeting.
The Pacific's beauty is fragile and its future uncertain.
We will not sit quietly and allow others to determine our fate.
As sea levels rise, Pacific leaders today launching a new report which finds 3 wealthy countries, Australia, Canada and the UK, have been responsible for more than 60% of emissions generated by new coal and gas projects in the Commonwealth since 1990.
Tuvalu's Prime Minister Feleti Teo has signed a landmark pact with Canberra, but says if the federal government doesn't phase out fossil fuel exports, the future looks grim.
To put it plainly, it is a death sentence, not phrases that I use lightly.
All of us have to respond on climate, all major economies in particular.
King Charles also keen to highlight dire climate threats, visiting mangroves which guard against coastal erosion, and being granted the honour of a chiefly title. Anthony Albanese landed this afternoon in Samoa in driving rain. Another reminder of how quickly the weather can shift here and how vulnerable the region is to even small climate shifts. He could face some hard questions on fossil fuels and on climate finance. But the Prime Minister will also want to remind Australians of the progress the government's made, building deeper security and strategic links with the region. Like a new Pacific Police support group encouraged by Australia with an eye on China. Officers from across the region now hitting Samoa's streets for its first ever deployment, providing security for CHOGM. But security threats take many shapes. Stephen Jedgetts, ABC News, Apia.
5 people have been killed and at least 22 injured in a terror attack in Turkey. 1 male and 1 female terrorist armed with rifles and explosives opened fire at an aerospace company. Turkey was fast to retaliate, launching more than 30 airstrikes against Kurdish militant targets.
2 gun-wielding assailants stalked towards their target, the headquarters of one of Turkey's most important defence and aviation companies. First gunfire, then an explosion. Surveillance cameras capture a gunman up close when he enters the facility near Ankara. Special forces deploy, then communications are silenced.
I called my brother who was inside and said, "What happened?" He said, "A bomb had exploded." Then the phones shut off.
4 of the dead were employees of the aerospace company. 1, mechanical engineer Zahida Güçlü, arrived at the entrance at the same time as the attackers. She was collecting a bunch of flowers sent by her husband. The 5th was the taxi driver who drove the pair to the location. Turkey's defence minister suggested the Kurdistan Workers' Party, known as the PKK, a listed terrorist group in Australia, was behind the attack.
This complex houses Turkish Aerospace Industries, a major manufacturer of both civilian and military aircraft, and in particular drones. Those drones have been used extensively in Turkey's fight against Kurdish militants. The attack came just 1 day after a far-right ally of Turkish President Erdogan called for the imprisoned leader of the PKK to be released if he renounced violence and disbanded the organisation.
The Turkish president was in Russia, attending a summit with Vladimir Putin.
I would like to express my condolences.
I condemn this heinous attack.
Our prayers are with all of those affected and their families, and of course also the people of Turkey at this very difficult time.
In response, Turkey launched more than 30 airstrikes against Kurdish militants in Iraq and Syria. Eric Twarchek, ABC News, Istanbul.
Israel has continued to attack southern Beirut, destroying residential buildings in a wave of violent strikes. It comes as Israeli authorities have arrested more than a dozen people on charges of carrying out missions for Iran.
Beirut's night sky lit up as Israeli strikes pound the capital. One hitting the empty office of pro-Iranian broadcaster Al Mayadeen. Hours earlier, the Israeli military issued evacuation warnings for the ancient port city of Tyre. Popular with tourists, the vibrant metropolis had largely been spared until now. Israel hitting buildings close to heritage sites, including the UNESCO-listed Roman Hippodrome.
It was the first time we heard these sounds. It was terrible, really terrible.
The Israeli military said it was targeting Hezbollah assets in the area, but Tyre is home to many civilians with no ties to the Iranian-backed terrorist group.
We took the children, grabbed what we could and fled. Suddenly, while we were sitting by the sea, we heard that our house had been destroyed.
Hezbollah firing more rockets at Israel, some as far south as Tel Aviv. All happening as the US Secretary of State was in Israel trying to negotiate ceasefires with Hezbollah and Hamas in Gaza.
We're working to get clear understandings for Gaza's governance, for its security, for its reconstruction, and what the international community can do to help.
In Khan Yunis, Gazans are desperately searching for something to eat.
Sometimes we manage to get a pack of bread, but other times we leave empty-handed. Sometimes we and the children manage to eat, and sometimes we don't.
And as the fighting continues on two fronts, Israel continues to plan its retaliatory attack against Iran after a barrage of missiles earlier this month. And Israeli authorities have arrested more than a dozen people in the last fortnight accused of spying for Iran. Growing unease as US efforts to stem the violence falter. Matthew Doran, ABC News, Jerusalem.
Australia's Big Four banks are using artificial intelligence to help decide home loan approvals. Staff in call centres are also being assisted by AI, sparking fears jobs could be cut. With a lack of specific regulation, there are also concerns about the rise of using this technology.
At ANZ's new AI centre, workers are being taught how artificial intelligence can help them process loan applications.
So whenever you apply for a loan, we have to pick up all sorts of information such as pay slips, proof of employment, complex loan contracts. AI can now allow us to actually take information from documents, cutting the amount of time it takes from hours and hours down to sometimes mere seconds.
AI also acts as an over-the-shoulder assistant for about 1,200 call centre staff.
People have used this technology to very quickly summarise everything about what the bank has on file for the customer.
Unions are worried about job losses and they want banks to explain to staff how it will change their work.
We don't want to see a situation where finance workers or consumers in Australia are simply having AI foisted upon them and they are having to deal with whatever the banks decide is a good idea.
Now, the danger, particularly for financial institutions or any institution that is governed by certain codes of behaviour, is that those AIs will make mistakes.
The rapid pace at which AI is advancing means the technology is moving faster than the regulation. The European Union has already introduced some laws to regulate artificial intelligence, a model Australia could consider. ANZ says the risks are being carefully weighed up.
I don't think that's likely to happen in the next 5 to 10 years of having a home loan completely decided by a machine. I think it's very likely, though, that the way we're going to buy homes will be fundamentally different.
Differences customers will soon see as they interact with Australia's biggest lenders. Nasim Khadem, ABC News.
The WA Museum has been criticised for acquiring a piece of perspex that once protected an iconic Australian painting, which was graffitied by climate activists. The move has ignited debate on whether it's glorifying vandalism or preserving a moment in WA's history.
Once a reprehensible action, now a potential artefact.
I don't think it is glorifying graffiti. I think the museum's purpose is to preserve everything, all aspects of what happens in society.
No, they shouldn't be advertising the fact that this is what people have done, because somebody else will think, oh, I'll get my fame.
What's considered one of the country's greatest paintings was defaced in January last year after a climate activist spray-painted a Woodside logo on the acrylic covering of the 1889 masterpiece. Joanna Partica from the Disrupt Burrup Hub protest group was arrested, fined and ordered to pay thousands of dollars to the Art Gallery of Western Australia after being convicted of causing criminal damage. The museum CEO says the piece in storage won't be on display anytime soon.
We talk of museums as safe places for difficult conversations, and that's why you will find in this museum, in many museums today, many different views, conflicting views.
And while there's been a mixed reaction, both sides of politics agree.
Throw it in the bin.
We don't keep the carriages that people have graffitied, our train carriages that people have graffitied. We don't do that. We clean the graffiti off because it's illegal behaviour.
In a statement, the family of the artist, Frederick McCubbin, says it supports the museum's decision to collect material significant to WA's cultural life. His great-granddaughter, Margot Edwards, described the perspex on the painting as an effective palette for the radical protest. The museum says Woodside supports its decision to keep the piece and possibly put it on display in the future. Herlin Call, ABC News.
A councillor in a remote WA mining community is urging the federal government to make changes to the Australian citizenship test. He's written to the Prime Minister in support of a woman who's a valued member of the community and is about to make another 8-hour road trip to attempt the test for the 6th time.
In WA's mining heartland, one of the most important days in these migrants' lives has arrived.
I've spent more than half my life here, so it feels like home.
But just a few streets away, becoming an Australian feels a long way off. Nett Woolcock has tried and failed to pass the citizenship test 5 times.
I don't understand why the citizenship too hard, because I'm studying a lot about that.
For each test sitting, she has to drive an 8-hour round trip to Karratha.
Every time if we go to family, we spend 1,000, maybe more.
Her husband says there's no one more deserving of citizenship than his wife.
It'd be nice if they could have some sort of way of just finding the good people, you know, like just sort of green lighting people that are actually active in the community, and rather than, just someone that was academic that could answer a question doesn't necessarily make you a good person.
In 2020, 5 questions on Australian values were added to the test, a change made in part to encourage better English language skills.
Personally, I don't think it passed the PUP test.
A local council member is advocating for Nett Woolcock by sending a letter to the Prime Minister asking him to review the content of the test.
If you know what a stop sign is, a green or red light or an amber light, if you know you've got to pay taxes, you've got to vote, I think they're the more important things.
Since 2020, the pass rate for first attempts at the citizenship test has dropped from 94% to 84%. In the 2023-24 calendar year, more than 25,000 people failed on their first try. A spokesperson for the Assistant Citizenship Minister, Julian Hill, told the ABC the test is regularly reviewed to ensure the language and questions are clear and fair. Nett Woolcock is booked in to have another crack at the test here in Karratha at the end of the month and is hoping to get over the line this time. Charlie McLean, ABC News, Karratha.
Coming up on 7:30 with Sarah Ferguson, less than 2 weeks out from the US election, are black voters abandoning the Democratic Party?
I will be voting for Donald Trump.
Why?
Why? I believe that he would be a much better candidate.
Donald Trump has a certain kind of appeal to male voters in general, including male African-American voters.
Dude attacked his own country. He's finna be the president again. Come on, man.
Donald Trump's longest-serving chief of staff says he believes the Republican presidential nominee meets the definition of a fascist. Retired Marine General John Kelly worked in Donald Trump's White House between 2017 and 2019. He's told the New York Times that while in office, the former president had praised Hitler for doing some good things and prefers the dictator approach to government. The Trump campaign called the claims fabricated, but Vice President and Democratic candidate Pamela Harris has seized on the reporting.
Donald Trump is increasingly unhinged and unstable. And in a second term, people like John Kelly would not be there to be the guardrails against his propensities and his actions.
At least 24 people are now confirmed dead after a tropical storm hit the northeastern Philippines. Widespread flooding and landslides swept away cars and prompted authorities to scramble for motorboats to rescue trapped villagers. Storm Trummy brought winds of up to 160 kilometres an hour when it made landfall just after midnight local time. Authorities expect the death toll to rise as they attempt to reach villages isolated by fallen debris. The woman at the centre of a mass rape trial in France has told the court she's completely destroyed, but hopes she can give courage to others by speaking out. Giselle Pellicot has been praised for allowing the trial to be held in public, and the case has energised a push to change consent laws in France.
Leaving court to applause and admiration.
Supporters have been here every day of this gruelling trial to cheer on their new feminist hero. Giselle Palico came face to face with her ex-husband Dominique, who admitted to drugging her in their family home. So he and 50 strangers he recruited online could allegedly rape her while she was unconscious over the course of a decade. Most of the accused men have denied rape, saying they thought they were playing a part in the couple's game. On the stand, Ms Palico spoke directly to her ex-husband but refused to look at him. "How could you have betrayed me to this point? How could you have brought these strangers into my bedroom? I'm a woman who is totally destroyed, and I don't know how I can pick myself up from this." Ms Palico chose to have the trial held in an open court, waiving her right to anonymity. She says she was motivated by a desire to lift the shame felt by rape victims and hopes the public trial will help change society.
This is a case which has shaken and horrified the world and prompted deep soul-searching in France. Whether the country should change its rape law to include consent has been a hotly contested issue, and now a review has been launched into the legislation.
We want to reverse the paradigm and say that actually there is no consent unless the person has clearly expressed it in a free and conscious manner.
Thousands of protesters have taken to streets across France in recent weeks in solidarity with Giselle Palico and a growing push for change. The trial has reached its halfway point and is expected to continue until December. Bridget Rollison, ABC News.
To finance now, the founder and CEO of Australian technology leader WiseTech Global has resigned after a week of damaging revelations about his behaviour. Here's Alan Collar.
Earlier this week, it emerged that WiseTech founder and CEO, billionaire Richard White, had bought expensive houses for women he was having affairs with and paying them big salaries. Today, a leaked letter by a former director accused him of intimidation and bullying. It was the last straw. The share price fell another 6.5%, taking the total loss of value to more than $8 billion in a week. And tonight, Richard White resigned, effective immediately. The market as a whole eased today with falls by miners, gains by banks. And in banking news, there is a rare split between them. It's about that loan buffer the bank regulator increased from 2.5% to 3% during the pandemic. It means, of course, that you can only get the loan if you can afford repayments at a 3% higher rate than you're actually paying. So we thought the banks all wanted to cut back to 2.5% as it was, so they can lend some more. But no, NAB and ANZ do. So does the Australian Banks Association, but today it emerged that Westpac and Commonwealth Bank want it kept at 3% because they're worried about delinquency. Also, they're doing fine, thanks. Speaking of banks, CBA released some analysis of its customer data today showing the impact of the tax cuts, which was quite big in the last quarter. But guess what? Spending did not rise at all. And the second guess what is that the 20% with the lowest incomes are the only ones reducing their spending. In other words, the poorest families are doing all the work of slowing the economy and reducing inflation. The US market fell last night, so did Hong Kong today, while Tokyo rose. Commodities mostly fell, gold, iron ore and oil all down by more than 1%, and the Aussie dollar continued to drift against the strong US dollar. And that's finance.
A raft of sporting heroes have been unveiled as the latest inductees into the Australian Sport Hall of Fame. From the athletics track to the bowling green, the accomplishments of some of our best ever sportsmen and women have been celebrated at a ceremony in Melbourne.
Olympic hurdles champion Sally Pearson is still coming to terms with her achievements.
It's quite surreal. All of a sudden you have this phone call saying, oh, we're going to induct you into the Sporting Hall of Fame. Like, really? What? Now?
One of 8 new inductees into Sport Australia's Hall of Fame, the 2012 London gold medalist counts herself lucky.
It's just who is the best athlete on the day, and if you can manage to be able to be that person, then there's no better feeling.
3-time surfing world champion Mick Fanning's beach days now look a little different in retirement.
The days that I get to take my kids out is so much more humbling, but also so much more rewarding than what I ever did. When I hear them screaming and having so much fun, best thing in the world.
Karen Murphy is the first female bowls player to receive the honour after news earlier this week the sport made the cut for the Commonwealth Games.
It's been a great week. Bowls in the Commonwealth Games means everything to our athletes and everyone who's gone before us.
Not so lucky was hockey. Former Kookaburras captain, now Hall of Famer Mark Knowles, not giving up hope of the sport's return to the Games.
The optimist in me would say, let's hope this is a reduced Games and we see back to normality in the future. But no one knows what the future at the moment looks like for the Com Games.
This latest round of inductees join the likes of Dawn Fraser, Richie Beno and Yvonne Goolagong-Cawley as icons of their sport. Their inclusion in the Hall of Fame now cementing the legacy they've already left. 2 Hall of Fame members will be elevated to legend status on November 18. Erin Marsicovetere, ABC News.
It might be one of the biggest marriage proposals ever seen, but for one WA farmer, the gamble to spray a huge "Will you marry me" across one of his paddocks has paid dividends. The giant message that could only be seen from a drone hundreds of metres above stunned his fiancée. But more importantly, she said yes.
After a long night on the Cedar, the idea on how Mitchell Thompson should propose to his partner took shape.
She said she wanted something romantic for a proposal, and I was racking my brains trying to think what I could do, and I wanted it to be on the farm, so it was sort of had a bit of sentimental value to it as well.
He secretly spent a day on the computer drawing the letters onto a map, which was uploaded to the GPS on his spray rig. The 40-hectare message took 4 days to complete. Then, while pretending to test out a drone for the farm, Mitchell convinced Shani to fly the machine.
It looks so good. They had it set up, so I just turned the drone slightly to the right and then it said, "Will you marry me?" And I said yes.
I was down on one knee for a long time. Yeah. But yeah, no, she said yes, and I was pretty stoked with that. Yeah, I guess I would recommend it. It's got a bit more attention than I was expecting, but yeah, all I really wanted was Shani to like it and say yes, which is what's happened, so I couldn't be more happy.
No date yet for the wedding. There's harvest to come first. Mark Bennett, ABC News, South Stirling.
Oh, good on you, Mitchell. Now to the weather with Tabarak Jrood. And how's it looking into the weekend, Tabarak?
Well, if you're enjoying the sunshine we've been having lately, Pamela, then you're in luck. You can look forward to more of that on the weekend. We've got some lovely conditions coming up, similar to what we had today. Perth reached a warm maximum of 29.6 degrees at 12:30 this afternoon, after a low of 11 just before 4 a.m. We did see some single digits overnight across the southern half. Air in the Eucla was the coldest spot, dropped to just 1 degree. But it was a warm day across pretty much the whole state, but especially over in the north, where we had more maximums in the 40s. A few places even got to 42 degrees, including Marble Bar, Mandorah and Halls Creek. Now on the satellite, we had relatively clear skies, besides a patch of cloud over central northern parts of the state. We also had a couple of thunderstorms around the Telfer area this morning, but it's been pretty dry elsewhere. Meanwhile, a low-pressure trough has shifted from the west coast and is moving inland. So areas along that coastline will drop a few degrees tomorrow, while places further east can expect some warmer temperatures. We also have a new ridge developing near the south coast over the weekend, while another trough will begin to form down the west coast again. So by next week, we can expect some very warm conditions. Taking a look around the country tomorrow, possible shower for Sydney and Brisbane. Melbourne could also see some falls in the morning. A shower or two for Hobart, only getting to 13 degrees there. Partly cloudy in Adelaide and Canberra, while Darwin heads for 35 again. Back home, we've got similar conditions across the northern half with more hot temperatures all around. Besides Carnarvon and Denham, most towns will be pushing into the high 30s and low 40s. There is also the chance of showers and thunderstorms over parts of the Kimberley and the North Interior. It's also staying pretty warm for much of the goldfields and the wheat belt, while places along the central west coast will be cooling down slightly as it becomes windy there tomorrow. Geraldton 25, Darien Bay 24. Further south, it's looking partly cloudy with milder temperatures forecast. There is the chance of morning fog for parts of the southwest and the Great Southern, while later in the day we could see some light showers developing over in the southwest region and along the south coastal districts. In Perth, we've got another lovely day to look forward to with mostly sunny conditions, but there is the chance of morning fog in the southwest. It won't be as hot as today though. Instead, we're heading for a forecast top of 25 degrees from an overnight low of 12. On local waters, winds will be southerly 15 to 25 knots, with seas increasing up to 2 metres around midday. The sun will rise at 26 past 5 and set at 6:36 p.m. And then looking ahead, it's slightly cooler on Saturday with a top of 24, warming up to 28 on Sunday, but then it really starts to heat up from Monday. We're looking at reaching 37 degrees on Wednesday and maybe even setting a new October record, Pamela.
Oh, we'll have to see. That's ABC News for now. Charlotte Hamlin will be with you tomorrow. In the meantime, you can stay up to date with ABC News online or catch the news anytime on ABC iView. Stay with us for 7:30.